Good morning, everyone. Thank you for those of you who've been waiting patiently before we started this morning's workshop. We'll just give it a moment as there's quite a few coming into today's workshop. We'll just keep admitting those as they turn up now. I am going to share my screen in a moment. If you've not been in a PD session with me before, you may be aware that I like to use Padlet boards to basically help me drive rather than PowerPoint slide decks, etc. But I'm happy to give you the link to the board that I'm presenting from today. Feel free to go for a wander in there. I also have a PDF version of it that I will add to the chat. The session is absolutely being recorded. And the recording and the artifacts associated with all of the Teaching Academy PD sessions are available to you in the TA Teams channel as well. In the event list, you'll see that there is a column there called Assets. And if you go in there, you can get a hold of all of the recordings, the slides, everything else. So I'll share the PDF version of the file. The recording is going, so I think we might make a start. My name's Lachlan Kalish. I'm the Learning Innovation Lead in the Division of Learning and Teaching, and I'm joined this morning by Alex Barnes. Keegan, how am I saying that right, Alex? I've missed the hyphenated
Keegan.
bit. Keegan,
Barnes
right.
Keegan, Irish.
Thank you very much. Alex is going to be co-piloting me today, so your questions are more than encouraged in the chat. He will answer the ones that he can as we go through, and those that bear further discussion, etc., amongst the group. We'll be stopping periodically to engage with those as well. So please feel free to side channel in the chat, etc., at your leisure. Access permission is required. That's terrible. Let me make sure that the share settings are what they're supposed to be. It should be secret. You should be able to at least view it. You might not be able to write on it. So let's use that. Okay. Is the session mostly for new people? We have an overview that's fairly comprehensive. I'm not going to be spending a lot of time on apart from just bringing to people's attention things like the subject delivery guide and pre-existing bodies of information. So I'd rather get into, I guess, the main items that I want to focus on for preparing your subject sites in Brightspace as we're now at week -2. So it's going to be looking at assessment portal setups. It's going to be looking at the gradebook. It's going to be looking at your initial communications. Those types of items will be the main focus that I will spend more time on. I also would like to give people access to a checklist tool that we have that you can use yourself, which will basically take you through a comprehensive list of things to be looking at in your site to make sure it is ready to go. Some people engage with all of those items. Others are looking specifically at some areas like communications or assessment, etc. So I'm going to share that file with you as well. There is a significant amount of help material that is at the end of this Padlet deck under Handy Resources. So I would suggest that you have a look there as well for additional information like the Brightspace Help Guide, the DLT support page for Brightspace, etc. And there's also an org site that takes you through a lot of information that we cover here as well. All right, so I've started backwards a little bit there by mentioning that a lot of the support resources that we're talking about today you'll find in that list, including the checklist tool itself. I will provide the file for you directly so that if you just wanted to use that and disappear, you can certainly do that. So it is the Preparation checklist. Let me just find that here. Subject preparation checklist. Okay, here is the file. Now that's a HTML file, which means you need to save it to your computer and then you open it in your web browser. So Chrome, Safari, whatever it is that you're using. And that will open this page for you exactly that we're looking at which point you can open up and work through the checklist items. It's not saved anywhere else, it's just for you. But you'll notice that the tool also has the ability for you to print out that checklist if you want a hard copy of it just to work through and look at. So don't feel obliged to kind of work through the interactive aspects of it if you don't want to. It's for you to use as you will. Okay. The things that we're going to be looking at today, let's get to the itinerary. I want to point out the subject delivery guide and remind you where it is and just how full of information it is. We're going to look at the subject outline tool very briefly to make sure that you're all on top of that. I'm sure most of you are. I will talk about that distinction at this particular point in time between the master site and your session subject site, because today is Tuesday in week -2, which is a pretty important time for working in Brightspace, because everything you do from this point on for this session needs to be in the, we might just mute Alex if you can see anyone else on there in the people list. Right, so everything you need to be doing is in the session subject site. Then we'll look at assignment portals, gradebook column setups, quizzes, discussion boards, etc. This will all depend on whether or not there is desire from you in this group to look at any particular area in more depth. So I'm encouraging you to use the chat and tell me what specifically about preparation for Brightspace you want to know today. If you've got areas you want us to dig into, drop them into the chat and we can absolutely spend more time on those. All right, let's get into it. The subject delivery guide. Right, you may be aware of this tool. It's been around for a very long time. This website, and I'll drop it into the chat, is a huge comprehensive list that is broken down by session and by week, and it will go into the spread of weeks from week -10 through until well after the session's finished in terms of the activities that you may be wanting to do in your site. So if I start with 2025-60, it'll give me a file that I can add to my own list in Outlook if I wanted reminders about everything. But right now I'm going to go down to the items themselves. Let's have a look at week -2. This is where we are right now. If I open that tab, it's going to give you reminders about things that many of you I'm sure will be aware of, but this is the time to be thinking about things like welcome messages, announcements, setting up your assessments, and also your gradebook setup. There are links to further resources and items in here if you need them, but all of that information is organized week by week by week by week. So this is a very comprehensive tool. Maybe there's too much information there for you and you're looking specifically for one thing, but if you're after a place to begin, that might not be a bad idea. The subject delivery guide. Moving right along. Your subject outlines in Brightspace. When we enter the Brightspace system, the system homepage will have a subject outlines tab at the top. This will link to the subject outline tool for those of you doing QA and preparing them, but we are now beyond that point, which means that if you are in your subject sites, your session subject sites, let's find one, that'll do. When you come into your session subject site with the S- at the beginning, you will find your now published subject outline underneath My Subject, Subject Outline, and depending on how many cohorts you have in the subject, if it's only the one cohort, you will be taken straight away to the subject outline with the assessments flagged underneath. So that's now live and visible to students who've been enrolled into the site as of yesterday. So the site is visible to them unless you have gone about hiding parts of your site. So what am I talking about there? Things like your content, where you may be looking at your files and folders and deciding which ones you want visible or invisible. Use your toggles, hide them or not hide them depending on what you're comfortable with students seeing. You can do that at the folder level and everything underneath will not be accessible to students, or you can go ahead like these people have and hide every individual page. Obviously, you're going to need to unhide them all at that point when you're ready for students to see them. The other option you have is to use release conditions to actually establish timing around when you want your content to be available. And the way that you would do that is edit the object. So 3 dots to the top right, edit, and then go into your availability dates. And you can determine when you want the content to start being visible to students. So if you've got a preference for when you want things to start revealing themselves, you can pre-program it, as it were, using your start dates. Release conditions underneath are going to be more for those of you who want the content to only be available to specific cohorts of students. If you're looking at doing that, you're going to be adding a new release condition. The type of release condition we're looking for is to refer to the class list, so all the students enrolled, and to point it towards particular section enrollments. So at that point, I might be saying, I only want this folder to be visible to Albury students. And you can create that condition. You'll then get a confirmation here that only those people will be able to see it. So if you're looking at restricting your content, you can start establishing timing and release conditions, etc. Now the session subject site is live, so it's ready for you to begin configuring it. Let me stop there. Alex, I'm going to check in with you if I got anyone raging in the chat yet about what we've been talking about.
We do just have one question asking about the setup of group spaces as well, and we could tie that in with the release conditions. Or did you have a separate component?
Yeah, I'll talk about groups probably when we get a bit closer to the assessment bit. So I definitely will spend some time on it, but I want to talk about it connected with assessment. So we can certainly do that. All right, so subject outlines are now live. They're visible to students, and we obviously need to go through the site to see what things we're comfortable with students seeing. Content was the one we looked at initially. The other part that you're going to need to be looking at is your assessment. And this is where we will spend more time today than other areas. So what I'm going to do is probably look at a couple of example subjects. If you have a particular subject site that you would also like me to look at as a part of this exercise, feel free to drop it into the chat and we'll see how we go time-wise, but I'm always looking for volunteers. So the first one I'm going to look at is MGT 584. Let's do this one. Here's the session subject site for 60. And what I'm looking for at this point is I want to get the detail for the assessments first, so I've got them on hand. You might have a hard copy of your subject outline, but what I'm going to do is open the outline here, find the assessments listed. So there's 4 of them. I've got due dates, I've got weightings, all of that is great. I'm going to use my snipping tool so that I've got all that information on hand so I can just refer to it. Park that on the side. And now I'm going to have a look at my assessment setup in this subject. So there's 4 in that list. They just referring to them. Assignment. Oh, there's a group task. That'll be interesting. And an assignment. Okay, so let's go into our assignment dashboard. And looking at this, I can see that we have a number of assessment shells in place. When we say shells, it means that they've come from the master subject site. They've been published here. I am interested in the fact that we have pre-existing due dates from the last time this subject ran already in here. This is a problem. If you've put due dates into your master site, They will transfer every time you run the subject, and as soon as the students are enrolled, they're going to receive an email saying that they've missed the due dates for all of their assignments. Not a good start. So we want to make sure that due dates are never put into the master subject site if possible. We configure them here in the session subject site, not in the master. So there's the first thing I'm looking at here. The next part is I can see from the icons next to the titles of these assessments that they're currently set up for Turnitin. That part's good, but they're not published to the gradebook. They're not linked to columns yet. So I'm going to need to fix that as well as the due dates and check the weightings. So let's have a look here at what we need. The first assessment item is called Work Styles in Teams. Okay, that is in fact a discussion item. Work Styles in Teams, discussion, it's worth 10%. Okay, we can work with that. I'll go to the discussion tool. So communication, discussions. There is a forum for it. Here's the topic. In Brightspace, assessments in discussions are done at the topic level. There's the ribbon that tells me that it's linked to the gradebook, so that's a good start. Let's edit this topic. And I'm going to check. 10% is correct. There isn't a due date currently for this. So what I'm going to do is add this column to the gradebook. Or I can link it to one of the columns which has come from your subject outline. So let's do that. Link to existing. I want to link to an existing column in the gradebook. And there's one here called Bathurst Distance Work Style in Teams. That's the one. And yes, it's worth 10%. Good. It's now published and linked. So that part is good. There's no due date against this topic. So that's something I'm going to need to chase up. I also want to check that this information that's been put here previously is actually current. And I can see here this is information which has come from a previous session. So that's going to need to be fixed. So maybe for the time being, I can see from the outline that it's the 29th. So I will fix it in this case for the academic. But they're going to need to rectify this information. Alex, we might flag that or make a note. We'll pass that back to the academic that the dates in the discussion item need attention. Okay, the other thing that you're looking for with your discussion assessment setups, how do you want it to display? Do you want students to be able to see everybody else's posts? That's usually the biggest question we have around assessable discussion items because they will all be visible to everybody else in the cohort. If you don't want them seeing each other's submissions, there's a setup you're going to need to go through, and I suggest you log a Sherwell ticket to get assistance from DLT in setting that up. But by default, all discussions are visible to every other student as soon as they post. We have a look at evaluation. If you've got a rubric that needs attaching, that's going to need to happen here. And if you're also ranking multiple posts along the way, there is a setting in the discussion tool that you're going to need to turn on. I would suggest if you want to use an accessible discussion item and it's your first time doing it, log a Sherwell ticket, have a chat with an educational designer. They'll be able to walk you through the process. It's an easy one to help with. All right, let's get out of here and have a look at those standard assignments. Going back to my assignment dashboard, the second item in my list, 30% assignment. There's some due dates. There's nothing else about it I need to really know. Doesn't mention Turnitin anymore, interestingly, and that's because it's built in to the assignment interface. So let's check that. Assignment 2 is called Planning and Launching a Virtual Team Report. There it is. I can see that there is an old due date in there. So let's edit this assignment. Yes, it's worth 30%. The new due date as per the outline is the 15th of August. They're telling people to look at the subject outline. Good. Now we need to link it. So I'm going to take this not in gradebook area. I'm going to link to existing. I'm going to link to existing and find it in the list. Virtual team report, there it is. 30%, 30%, good. Okay, that part is done. Let's check the rest of the settings. It's an assignment. They can submit it as many times as they like. No, they only want one file each time the students submit. They can't submit multiple. There are no restrictions for this, which means that the students can submit any type of file. I'd say at this point, if you're getting your students to submit text-based documents for your assignments, that you want to change this to annotatable files. That will mean that it will work with Turnitin and you'll be able to mark up and annotate the assignment within Brightspace. If you leave it as no restrictions, you'll get students using all sorts of file formats like Apple, what's the one I'm thinking of? Pages, for example. Other types of software that they might be using, which you're not going to be able to mark up in Brightspace, or Turnitin might have a problem with. If you stick to using annotatable files for a standard text-based assignment, you're not going to have any problems. So that's definitely one to keep in mind. You would only be using no restrictions if you're having the type of assignment where students need to submit other types of files, media files, MP4s, audio files, posters, images, things like that. But I'd be choosing either annotatable or no restrictions, depending on your needs. All right, I'll leave that alone. The next one I want you to look at is the submissions area. A lot of people have been selecting only the most recent submission is kept. This is problematic if you have a student who submits or resubmits after you've marked an assignment. At that point, it will wipe all of your work with a new blank version that the student has uploaded. So I would strongly suggest that you check all submissions are kept, noting that the most recent submission will always be at the top of the list. The due date's still 2024. Thank you very much, Chris. Good pickup. Okay, unless you want to be emailed every time a student submits an assignment, leave the notification email area blank, and then you get to look at your evaluation settings. The most important things we're looking for here are that Turnitin has been turned on, good, and if you've got a rubric for marking, that you'll be attaching it here. A lot of people don't have their rubrics ready at this point. Maybe they'll come back to those before submission or before marking. That's fine. You can revisit that, but this is where it's going to happen. Okay, I'm happy with those settings. Save and close, and we're done with the assignment setting. Alex, what have we got?
Got a question there for a multi-campus subject written report assessment, including Sydney and Melbourne. Can I have one submission portal in the gradebook setup?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Nicola. From my understanding, you can't use a common portal for, it's probably something you want advice from the school for, but in most instances when they're working with Navitas campuses, Sydney and Melbourne, they want separate columns for each assessment. So we've got common portals like we have here for all CSU campuses, so they can all submit in the one place, all be marked in the one place, etc. But for Navitas generally, they want their own columns for Melbourne and for Sydney. Yeah, I'm happy to chat to you about that later if you like. All right. So we have an example there of configuring that assessment. I'm going to now look at that group activity and tie into that talk about groups that we mentioned beforehand. If you have a group assessment in Brightspace, your best bet is to set the groups up first, which happens inside the communication area. You want those in place, and then you link the assessment to those groups. So if I go into groups, at the moment there isn't any in there. So I'm going to start this process by going in and creating a new category. In the groups tool, category just means a group set, a collection of groups for one purpose. So hit new category. This set of groups was for assessment 3. So I might go A3 student group task. That'll do for the moment. Students cannot see the description. I'm not sure exactly of the setup for this task. I'd need to talk to the academic, but let's assume that the students need to get into groups of 4, at which point I'd be saying groups of a specific number. This will automatically divide them. And if you want the students to be able to choose the groups themselves to sign up, then you have to go down and choose one of these options that requires self-enrollment. But let's do the automatic split. Groups of 4. How many? 4 in each. And then if you're working with an activity that needs to be restricted to particular cohorts of students, you'd use restrict enrollments. And then at that point, you can identify which particular cohort this activity might be for. But I'm just going to leave this to split every student that's enrolled into the subject. I'm going to make sure that anyone else enrolled into the site is added to this with auto enroll. Randomly split them up, otherwise they'll be split alphabetically. And that's it at the moment. All I want is the groups in place, and I'm going to hit save. Don't use the setup assignments option inside the groups tool. We don't set up our group tasks like that. We set up the groups on the one hand, and then we link them to the assignment portal that we want. So hit save. Groups are being made. Okay, it's creating those. If I refresh my browser, we'll now find that it's created 7. So that tells me there's probably 28, 30 odd students in this particular subject. And I'm now ready to create my group assignment. Absolutely uneven. So you can see here that it gives it its best attempt to even out the sizes of the groups, but you may have some that have 3 out of 4 rather than 4 out of 4, but it'll keep them as close as possible, Chris. Okay, going back to our assignment dashboard. Here's my group task. I'm now going to edit this and start working through the settings. The group task, if I have a look back at my snip, 20%, 26th of September. Okay. 26th of September next year. Let's link it to the gradebook. Link to existing. Link to existing. Find it in the list. There's the group task. Okay, yes, it's worth 20. That part's good. Now, to link your submission portal to the group setup that you've created, we have to go across to our submission settings. And we now get to choose between individual assignment and group assignment. And it will start looking for the groups that you've created. There it is. So that's now ready to go. We work through our other settings. How many files can they submit? Do we have any restrictions around the file type? So again, annotatable is the preferred for most text-based assignments, otherwise no restrictions. They've left it on as only the most recent. I'm going to switch that so that they get all the submissions. Turn it in has been turned on, and when I'm ready, I'll add the rubric. Good. That's ready to go. I'm assuming the instructions are up to date. So we'll save and close. What doesn't it like? There is a pre-existing end date in here. So again, when something's been added in the master site to do with dates, it will all transfer across. This end date means that this will disappear from student view after that point. So unless I fix this, no student would ever be able to see this assignment. So I need to remove this. Jen, I didn't see any due date element against the discussion items. They added it to the description of the topic. So I'll get back to you on that, but it didn't look like there was a due date field against the accessible discussion items. Okay. Have we got specific questions around the setup of assignments that anyone would like us to dive into at this point while I'm here? Alex, I'm not sure if I missed any.
Lachlan, so you don't, with discussion board, you link
Yep.
it the same way. You don't actually do it. It said had an option in there for discussions when you set up the groups. you still come out and link it back?
Yeah, if it's going to be a group task, yeah, I would still be linking it back the same way. I'd always create the groups first.
Okay.
Yep.
And that I'm still trying to download the preparation checklist. I go round in circles. It opens it up, then takes me to a web page, which takes me back to a web page, which takes me back to, and I can't actually open the actual checklist.
Okay, so what we're looking for, if you've downloaded the file to your computer,
I have.
you saved it, yep. So in
Well, it won't let me save. It says save progress, nothing happens. It says clear save progress, nothing happens. It says download checklist, nothing happens. It says print checklist, nothing happens. If you go to the three dots at the top.
these ones, we're talking about these options here.
Yes.
Okay. Right, sorry. So you have opened the checklist in a web page.
I have got
Okay.
that picture in a
Yep.
web page.
Yep. So
but
you've got a copy of the checklist, so that part's good.
I can't open it though.
So are you able to click on these chevrons to open up the checklist?
No, nothing happens.
Okay. Well, I'll have a look at that with you in a bit. Okay. We'll find out what's going on there. But you should be able to open it in whatever web browser you've got. But I'm not sure why that's not opening up for you. Has anyone else had problems accessing them? Just put it into the chat and we'll revisit that.
Thank you.
No worries. Alex, have we got any other assignment questions? Sorry.
There was another one. Can the same groups be used for multiple weekly in-class Brightspace quizzes?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep, you can repurpose and reuse the groups. The other thing that we often get asked about at this point is setting up marking teams. This is probably going to be more of an issue for you as you finalise your staff for teaching of the subject, but I'm happy to show you how that process works in here because it's a quick one. So let's go into the groups tool again. And we're going to do exactly the same process. I'm going to create a new group set, a new category. It might be marking for a particular assignment. And this time round, I'm going to be splitting this up based on, well, you've got two ways of approaching it. One of them is you want to manually allocate all of the students to your marking teams. That seems like hard work to me. Or another one is you want to split them up. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I want to split the cohort up into, let's say, groups of 10 as my base unit. And then when I find out what the capacity is, marking capacity for my markers is, I can allocate those groups to particular markers. So I'm going to go groups of 10, automatically split them up, auto enroll any new students added to the subject, and save. Okay, at that point, it's created 3 marking teams for me called group 1, group 2, group 3. You can change those if you like. Give them a name, give them an initial. I'm going to make Alex do some marking. So he's the first group. Second one, I'll do the marking for that. And so on and so forth. What that means is that when I'm ready to do my marking for an assignment, I can use the assignment dashboard, look at all of the submissions that have been lodged, and now refine my view to the groups that I've created. So I can view by group, hit apply, and the type of group I want to use in this case is marking teams and LK. There I am. And now it's only going to show me the students that are allocated to my groups. So that is a simple way of starting to allocate your marking teams based on, I guess, a lowest common denominator for students that you're going to allocate to your markers. And you can give them as many groups as you need to. So if Alex can do 40, I give him 4 groups. And if Lachlan can do 20, I give him 2 groups, etc., etc. Means I don't have to manually allocate students. Okay, moving right along. We were finalising our assessment portals, and some of you may have noticed when you've gone into your session sites that there was a message above the assignment dashboard that's talking about Turnitin and needing to re-enable Turnitin. And that's because when your subject assignments roll over from the master site, Turnitin kind of resets. It's still there, but it needs to be woken up. At that point, you just need to click that re-enable option and it will be working again for those assignments. So if you see that message above your assignment dashboard, just click re-enable. The things that we looked at were making sure that any information from the master that's rolled into your session subject site isn't going to be a problem for you. Due dates, start dates, end dates. Maybe the weighting has changed over time. You're going to need to review it, but it's also why we suggest that master sites have the bare minimum of information around the configuration of your assessment. So it's not really recommended that you keep due dates, start dates, end dates in your gradebook. It's going to give you problems each time the subject rolls around. Okay, visibility conditions for your assignments. When you create an assignment portal in Brightspace, it is hidden by default. You're going to need to unhide it when you're ready. We're now going to be going into the gradebook to have a look at the gradebook setup. All right, so in this particular subject, we had 4 assessments. We had configured several of them. We can see the ribbon telling me that that part's set up, Turnitin's in place. This particular assignment, the third one, because it's a group assignment, you'll see that it has the group icon next to it. So it has been set up for groups and the due dates are correct. So that setup's looking pretty solid to me. And you'll notice that the number that's being referred to here is talking about the number of groups. So 7 potential groups, 25 potential student submissions. So quick visual checks that you get there. All right, let's go into the gradebook. First thing I'd suggest in your gradebooks, if you aren't doing it already, is try and get the best out of the real estate that's in here. Instead of having these massive wide columns, using up all your space and making you scroll all the time, narrow the size of your gradebook columns by giving a short name to all of your assessments. So what am I talking about there? If we go into Manage Grades, have a look at your assessment items. These have been copied either from the subject outline or the assignment portal when you've published it. They're too long for me in terms of wanting to work through that gradebook, so I'm going to edit them. And you'll notice that they have the full name that the students see and then the short name that only I see. So I'm going to change that. This was the group task, which was, the discussion task, which was assessment 1. So I'm going to go A1, discussions. Now, if I save and close that, you'll notice that the size of this column now is that big. So in theory, I should be able to get all of my assignments on the one screen if I'm using a decent sized monitor. That's what I'm aiming for anyway. So I'll do that for each. I'm also going to shift the admin override column to the end because I don't need it, to be honest, at the beginning of the session. So there's generally a preference to reorder your items. So we go more actions, reorder, and I'm going to shift the admin override option down to the bottom. Okay, now I'll do the short names for all the others. Virtual team report, that is, which item was that? Where's my snip? Virtual team report's the second one. Okay, so A2, edit the item, change the short name, A2 report. Third one, group task, change the short name, A3, group task. And last but not least, we have a final report, which is A4. That'll do. And now I get a nice concise view of assessment tasks 1 through 4 on the one screen next to the IDs. Much better. Okay, the other thing that we're looking for under the Manage Grades tab is our totals. You want to make sure the final calculated grade is giving you a result out of 100, ideally. We also want to make sure that each of these items is the weightings that you want them to be, so they need to be correct. We also need to make sure that each of the columns in the gradebook is associated with the right assessment submission point. So the fourth item here, the report, has nothing in the association portal. So if I left that as it is, students would be able to submit, I could mark it, but the marks would go nowhere. This has to be associated with the right assessment portal. So that means back into my assessment area, assignment dashboard, let's open it up. And I can see that ribbon, gradebook, no gradebook. So this fourth one needs to be configured. So let's edit that one. The weighting is good, but it needs to be linked. So I'm going to link to existing. It's the only one left in the list, final report, and fix that due date, which is the 17th of October. Okay. 17th of October. So that part's good and it's linked. Check the other settings if you need to. Availability dates, they're there again. That end date is a real problem. I'm going to get rid of that. So now all of my assessments are linked, which means that the gradebook, looking at my manage grades area, if I refresh that now, they're all associated. My totals are correct. I've renamed my columns. I've ordered them properly. You can't really ask for much more than that in your gradebook for the start, although you may want to consider adding in a text column for comments. A lot of schools are using these now. If you don't have one in your gradebook yet and you want one, very simple to add. I'm going to go up here to new, an item, which just means column. The type of column I want to add is a text column. I'm going to go comments, and I'm going to change this because I don't want the student seeing this column. It's for me. Maybe it's for moderation. Maybe it's for my overrides. So the way we change the visibility is we go into the restrictions area and hide it. That's it. Any items that you add into this list will be added to the bottom firstly, so I can see comments are down there at the end. That's probably okay for now. And the last thing that I'm going to check here before I'm done with the gradebook is the admin override column cannot be included in your totals. It has to be excluded. And the way that I check that is to look for this exclamation mark. If for whatever reason you're not seeing that and this number is blowing out, you can edit the column and scroll down, and we're looking for this box, exclude from final calculations. That has to be checked for admin override. Okay, so that is, for me, about as good as we're going to get a gradebook set up at this point in the session. And my assignments are set up, except I haven't done rubrics yet. I'm going to need to come back to those when they're ready. All right, let me stop there. Alex, how are we looking? Have you got any specific questions or requests?
Looking pretty good. We did have a request for EMG 112. Just to
Okay,
have a look over those, that site.
EMG, or am I getting my titles wrong?
ENG, sorry.
ENG, sorry, thank you. Okay, there's the 60 site. Let's go for it. Any specific thing we're looking at? Assessments, I'm guessing?
Yes, please. Assessment.
No problem. Okay, I'm going to take that snip of the outline just briefly. 2 tasks. Give me that due dates and weightings. Let's go into the assignments area. Okay, we've got a report, we've got an exam. Is the exam a quiz? I'm guessing.
Yes, it will be online quiz, yes.
Okay, great. So A1 is an assignment and A2 is a quiz. This untitled one looks like maybe we've been playing around. So we can get rid of that one.
Yes, I don't know where it comes from. Yeah.
It's not a problem. All right, let's edit it. I can see that we've got a due date in there of the 25th.
Yeah, I just made this one while watching your video. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. So the 19th of September, it's hidden from students currently. It's linked to the gradebook. Turnitin is on. Let's edit the assignment and have a look. I'd probably suggest you try and use shorter names if you can, because that will transfer to the gradebook as well when you create it. Right, it is in the gradebook. Due dates look good. Files, submissions turned on, annotatable files. And are you only letting them have one attempt at submitting the report?
Yes.
Okay, good to know. That's very specific. And you'll need to attach a rubric eventually if and when you want to be doing
Yes,
that.
I have that. Yeah, I will do it.
Okay, the rest of the setup looks fine. You'll need to unhide it when you're ready.
Yeah, how to unhide it? Like just.
So you can do it by clicking the drop down and make visible.
Okay, got it. I got it. Yeah.
And the other spot is when you edit an assignment or create it, you'll see the toggle down here
Oh,
for
yeah,
hidden.
that.
So you can either way.
Cool.
All right. The other thing you mentioned was an exam. So we'll have a look in quizzes. It's not there yet.
No, I haven't developed it yet. I will develop it based on look from the quizzes. So select some of random questions and then add the new ones.
Okay. Do you get the exam team to set it up for you, or do you run it during session?
I will be during session.
Okay. What I'd suggest is that we create a shell for the exam. You don't have to put any questions into it or work on it now. We just have the shell in place.
Yes, please.
All right, so let's do that. We're just going to create A2, and it's called online examination in the outline. We'll leave it at that for the moment, and we are going to link it to a gradebook column, link to existing. There it is, 70%, 70, that part is good. And we leave the rest. You don't need a due date yet, I'm guessing, until you're ready to deal with the exam.
Yep.
And the rest of the exam setup conditions. All of those you can revisit, but this will give us a shell.
Yes.
And it means that we can finish our gradebook setup. So it's there down at the bottom for you to come back to when you're ready to work on the questions.
Awesome.
All right, so we go into My Grades, switch to Manage. And this is where I'd suggest you work on that reordering and renaming of the items if you want to. Keep in mind, you've currently got another column in here that's not linked to anything. This is the report assignment we were dealing with that is associated. This one you can get rid of.
Awesome.
Right, so what we're going to do to delete a column that we don't need, more actions, delete. And it will only let you delete items that are not associated. So I can't get rid of those ones even by accident. All right, so that's the one I want to go. And the rest I'm going to leave to you. Adds up to 100. The gradebook looks okay. You may want to rename, reorder, etc., or add a comments column if you like.
Awesome. That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. All right. Nicola's talking about categories. Okay, Echo 130. I'm happy to look at that for a second, and then we'll wrap things up for the
Yeah,
session.
Lachlan, I've just got a whole bunch of assessments with quizzes and whatnots, and then revision quizzes. And so then if you look at the quiz section, I was trying to categorize it so it's not just a hot mess disastrous, as you can see. But I created categories, but I can't figure out how to move things across into the categories I've created.
Right. Sure. So when you edit the quiz, you're going to find the category area underneath timing and display.
Oh.
It should be, unless I'm going mad. What am I doing, Alex? Why am I not seeing categories here?
Generally, I would do it from the quiz page itself, and you can do a bulk edit of all the quizzes.
Yeah, from the dashboard? Okay.
From the dashboard.
All right, so check the items here, bulk edit. Okay, there are the categories, so you can adjust them at that point. Normally, with assignments, for example, we find the categories in that second box, but it's not here, for example. So if you use bulk edit, you can choose the quiz, choose the category you want to put them in, and that will apply it for you.
Okay, so if I set up assignments, so for my weekly quizzes or worksheets, I can set that up in Gradebook and then link it into that, what you just showed me in that bulk edit with the categories, and then it will all be
Well, you can use the bulk edit tool in either the quiz tool or the assignment tool. It works the same in both. At the moment, none of these quizzes have been added to a category, as you said, but the categories have been created. So that means that you can use that bulk edit feature after you check to put them into categories. Like if I just chose this first one, for example, online sample exam, and I happen to put it into that category, I'll change this back.
No, that's fine.
If you hit that, you'll find that category here at the bottom.
Oh, perfect.
Yep. Right, so that's how it works. So you fix the categories however you want them.
Great, thank you.
That's okay. Did I see someone asking about satisfactory, unsatisfactory tasks, Alex? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, have we got a subject site that you want me to look at that in particularly?
Yes, please. Subjects, just a minute. The subject is EMP 106. EMP 106.
Am I getting the codes wrong? Do you want to drop it into the chat for me?
Okay, just a minute.
Thank you very much. 106, got it. Okay, so you've got a satisfactory, unsatisfactory task, I assume.
Yes.
Outline says that it is the first one. They both are. Okay, let's take a snip. So workplace learning subject, maybe?
No.
No, okay. All right, so the first part of this is, there's our Turnitin reminder. If you want that working, just hit re-enable and yes. Okay, that's now done. Any satisfactory, unsatisfactory task that doesn't have any other weighting, just that they need to pass it, is going to be scored out of 1. So it does need a weighting. So if we edit those assignments, it is going to be graded and it's going to be graded out of 1. That's what we need to happen. So you fix your other due dates and other things when you're ready. But the most important part about satisfactory, unsatisfactory is it has to be scored out of 1. So I'm going to put that in place for both of these. I'll do that for the second one as well.
Okay.
I'll let you fix the due dates and things when you're ready, okay? But I'm going to just fix the satisfactory, unsatisfactory part. So they're both scored out of 1. We go into the gradebook now because it's already been linked. Change across to the Manage Grades view. All right, so I can see at the moment that we've got 4 portals, but there are only 2 assignments. These are the ones that are linked, which means these 2 we don't need.
Okay.
Right, they need to go. So that's the first thing I'd be doing, is getting rid of any superfluous columns. So delete that one and that one. All right, so now we have 2 satisfactory tasks. They're scored out of 1. And what that means is that we have to change the grading scheme for these tasks. And we do that by editing. Because when it's marked out of 1, I don't want it saying HD through to fail. I want it saying this, satisfactory. So that in fact is perfect. And now what's going to happen is that the students will see, depending on if they get a 0 or a 1, either satisfactory or unsatisfactory.
Okay.
So that part is fine. You may want to think about changing what the students see, and that's this show section of the settings. So if you don't want the students seeing the score and they just see satisfactory or unsatisfactory, you can click Override Display Options and uncheck the points. Okay, that will just make sure the students only see SY or US.
Okay.
But the rest is okay. Change the other one. And the scheme is set for satisfactory, and I'm going to override so the students don't see scores. All right, that part is okay. And then the final calculated grade, you'll see, isn't out of 100, it's added out of 2. And for competency subjects, that's perfectly normal. At that point, I just edit this and make sure that the scheme that's being showed is showing me satisfactory. So all of that is fine.
Okay.
All right, so you just need to go in and set your due dates and things when you're ready to do that. But the rest looks fine.
All right. Thank you so much, Lachlan.
That's okay. All right, so look, I'm going to just check what else I've got in this sheet, if there's things that we need to spend a minute on or not. I am happy to hang around after the end of 11 o'clock, obviously, when we hit time. And if you've got specific things that you want me to talk about, even after that, again, just put them in the chat for me. All right. The most important part about your quiz setups at the beginning of a session is getting the shell in place and the gradebook. Your questions you can go back to and deal with your question pools and everything else, but the most important part is making sure the shell is linked through to the gradebook. Discussion boards we looked at with accessible topics. If you need help with accessible discussions, because they can get a bit messy, I do suggest that you log a Sherwell ticket and talk to an ED about the structure of it, because discussions in Brightspace can use up a lot of space, a lot of real estate, and they become massive exercises in scrolling, which make it difficult for the markers and difficult for the students to use. So they do need a little bit of thinking about how to set them up concisely. Gradebook column check we went through. Initial communications, that's probably worth talking about for a moment. For those of you that haven't sent out a welcome yet to students, an initial message in the subject, I'll do this in a sandbox rather than one of the subject sites. That'll do. You can go into your announcement area, create a new announcement. If you just want to create a draft, you can certainly do that at this point as well. Just make sure when you're finished, you click Save as Draft. Only publish it when you're ready for it to go to students, but you'll be putting in your welcome message, for example, whatever the title's going to be. I would suggest with any communications, if you want them to be targeted to particular cohorts of students, get into the habit of putting the cohort in brackets as a part of the message. It's just an additional little visual check to make sure you know that it has to be restricted to that group of students. So if I wanted a welcome to go out to BD students and I put in my body content in there, for example, by default, it'll go out straight away unless you want to schedule a date that you can release it. So if you want it to go out on the weekend, etc., you can set a date for that. You can also set an end date, which will mean it'll stop being visible to students, but most people don't use that feature. Physical attachments, or you can record audio or video for your announcement if you want to. But probably the most important part is if this needs to be targeted to a particular cohort, you're going to be adding release conditions. So at this point, I said BD in the title up here. So I'm going to make an announcement that only goes to those students. Pardon me. And I would be looking to set a condition that looks at the class list and my section enrollment. And you'll be looking for Bathurst distance as the section that I would choose for this to go to. I don't have any in my sandbox, but that's where you'll find it. And as I said, if you're not ready for it to go straight away and you just want to set a draft up, click Save as Draft. Otherwise, you can publish and it will be sent out immediately, both in Brightspace and to student notifications and emails. So let's see, what else have I got? Groups we had a look at briefly, and then we have our support resources at the end. The Brightspace help site that we have here, and I will open that up briefly, is very comprehensive, but it also requires that you know what it is that you're looking for. So you can start at the homepage for Brightspace help and start searching for particular topics, might be assignment help, etc., and it'll filter down the search areas that you're looking for and list the articles that are associated with it. But otherwise, you're going to need to navigate through these larger topics, working with your content, for example, looking at assessment areas, communication, and then you drill down through it. There's a lot in there, but you have to know how to search through it. All right, I am aware that we are just about at time. So Alex, I'm going to check in with you one last time and see, have we got any outstanding questions or requests at that point?
I believe you've covered all of the questions, I think. Apologies if I have missed any.
Okay. Otherwise, if there's anyone in
Yes,
here that
you
wants
can.
to come off mute and ask me anything, I'm happy for that now as well. But at this point, what I am going to do is stop the recording and say thank you for everyone that's come out this morning and joined us with the session. All of the assets from today, the recordings and the attachments, etc., will all be added to the Teaching Academy channel in about 40 minutes or so, give or take. And we look forward to seeing you at another session. So thank you for that. I'll stop the recording now, but I am hanging around. Thanks, everyone.